You guys have sent in a bunch of recipes and videos for debunking, so let's jump right in with viral olive oil caramel. There are loads of these videos on TikTok mixing together olive oil and maple syrup to make what looks like a caramel. So how does it taste? I'm using an olive oil that says it is very light in flavour, and I'm going to use a dark maple syrup that says it has a strong flavour. It does look a caramel colour and consistency, but it quickly settles out into the olive oil and maple syrup layers again. If we put maple syrup into a blender and then slowly dribble in the olive oil, we get a slightly more stable emulsion, but without an emulsifier, this will settle out again too over time. Let's taste it.
Caramel sauce, all right, let's give this a go. It's a bit green coloured. Oh, rank! Ah, no!
Tastes like oil.
Who blended up the grass?
Loved it. No, that's olive oil. That's not caramel. That's disgusting.
Dave's rating is 100% yuck.
Plain maple syrup. Delicious. Normal. Put this on ice cream. Don't put olive oil on ice cream.
Oh, of course. Very good. Sweet as.
100% straight maple syrup. Why would you mix it with olive oil?
They definitely preferred the plain maple syrup, but even that is not a caramel. Normally caramel is made by heating sugar and water until the sugar is dissolved and then washing down the sides of the pan with a wet pastry brush to get rid of any sugar crystals on the sides, and then continuing to heat it until it starts to go golden brown and you get that caramel flavour through it. Now, don't taste this. It's extremely hot. Hotter than boiling water, or as I like to call it, lava hot. So you need to be very, very careful. If we take a little bit out at this stage, you can see that it sets crack hard. It's not a sauce at all. If you want it to be liquid, you're going to have to add some more liquid back into it to thin it down. Normally, you would use cream and butter, but if you need a vegan option, I'm just going to use water. You could experiment with soy milk or whatever you like. Careful of the steam here though, it is going to bubble up and splatter quite a bit. And this will thicken as it cools, so you don't need to worry that it is a bit of a thinner consistency here. Let's see how that one tastes.
Also very good. Quite nice. Just sweet, what you want from caramel. Sweet and sticky. Good.
It's a bit bland, just a bit sort of straight sugar. So I think I would definitely go for the maple syrup. I think that one's got a bit more character.
Yeah, that's a pretty good caramel. I might even prefer that on ice cream to maple syrup, but obviously they're different things. Like, some people like maple syrup. Not a massive fan of maple syrup, but the caramel's nice, yeah.
Next, Hayley saw this online and wants to know if it's true. It says, did you know there are live enzymes in honey? Upon contact with a metal spoon, these enzymes die. The best way to eat honey is with a wooden or plastic spoon. There are a few different claims there. The first one is that honey contains enzymes. That one is actually true. They come from the bee's digestive system, and there's a few different enzymes, but they do all different jobs. One of them, for example, helps break down the sucrose, which is sugar that comes from the nectar the bees collect from different flowers, and it breaks down the sucrose into simpler sugars like glucose and fructose, which are the main sugars that you'll find in honey. The second claim was that if the honey comes in contact with a metal spoon, the enzymes will die. Well, enzymes are not actually alive, so they can't die. They're just proteins that help speed up particular reactions. They can be destroyed, like most proteins. They can be broken down and then they wouldn't be able to function anymore as enzymes. But coming into contact with a stainless steel spoon is not going to do that. And if you think about how honey is extracted from the hive, the tools that are used for taking the caps off the comb and the machine that's used for spinning the frames to get the honey out of it, they're all made of stainless steel. So your spoon coming in contact with the honey just for a little moment would have made no difference anyway if the steel was an issue. So if the stainless steel is not going to break down the enzymes, what is? Well, usually they'd be destroyed by heat. Most of the honey you buy at the store has been pasteurized, so it has been heated to a certain temperature and that will have broken the enzymes down. If you're thinking, well, I buy raw honey, so that hasn't been heated, UV light will also destroy the enzymes, so the fact that it's usually packaged in a jar will mean most of those enzymes have been destroyed. The other thing that will break them down is acid, like your stomach acid when you eat them. So you're not going to get any benefit from eating enzymes in honey anyway. And that's really not a big deal because out of all the enzymes that are in honey, all of them but one, we make ourselves in our own digestive tract anyway, in your small intestine, so that you can digest your food when you eat it. So it doesn't really matter. The only one enzyme that we don't make is one that reacts with glucose and water to make hydrogen peroxide. We don't actually want to make that in our intestine, so it's probably good that we don't manage to get that past our stomach and into our digestive tract anyway. Next, N. Iascadoso sent in this one.
If you add 4 eggs and 3 bars of chocolate to a blender, puree everything until smooth and creamy. It should look like this, thick and creamy. Transfer the batter into a baking dish and bake for 30 minutes. You've just made the best 2-ingredient grain-free brownies. Enjoy!
Sometimes I wonder if people send me videos just so they can watch Dave eat it. Let's make it. We've got 4 eggs, which I have absolutely scrubbed for ages under running water to make sure they are clean. And of course the dark chocolate, and blend that all up. And it is quite liquidy at first, but after letting it run for about 4 minutes, it gets quite warm and the eggs start to cook, so it is thickening up. There are still quite big bits of eggshell in there, but they're not getting any smaller. So let's tip it into the dish and bake it. It puffs right up in the oven, and then once it cools, it is flattened down a little bit. And you can still see all the eggshell bits in there. Time for a taste test.
Grain-free brownies. Smells like a brownie. It doesn't look grain-free. It looks like I can see grains in it. There's little specks. Maybe it's a nut? It's gross. Honestly, taste, not that bad. It's got a hint of something I can't exactly put my finger on. But I wish that, I don't know if the microphone could pick it up. I wish that it could. It's like eating sand.
Nasty. Gritty.
I don't know what those specks are that looks like grains. Every mouthful is crunch, crunch, crunch. I've still got some in my teeth. Crunch, crunch, crunch. It's like eating sand.
As unpleasant as that one was, there have actually been quite a few studies about using eggshells as a cheap source of calcium for people who can't afford a calcium supplement and for whatever reason are unable to have enough dairy products in their day. It's shown that in both animal and human studies, the calcium is quite well absorbed and you only need half an eggshell a day to give you your calcium requirements. So it is quite cheap and affordable to do. But it has quite a few problems, the first one of which you have just witnessed. It's the texture, the grittiness that comes with it. One study actually used an industrial ball mill to grind the eggshells down to a fine powder, and then they compared that to eggshells that had been crushed using a rolling pin and sieved to get rid of any big bits. The finely ground one in the ball mill was undetectable in dense things like pastas and breadcrumbs, but it was still detectable in things like stew and rice with vegetables and corn flour. The home ground one, made using the rolling pin and the sieve, was of course detectable in everything as you would expect. So if you have a wet stone grinder at home, you could possibly do some experiments if you needed to. You can also dissolve the eggshells in orange juice overnight, but then the cost of the wet grinder and the orange juice is then more expensive than just buying a calcium supplement. So it then doesn't become a cheap, affordable way of doing things. The other consideration, of course, is food safety. Eggs can be a source of salmonella. So in these studies, they heated the eggshell powder to 135 degrees and kept it there for 15 minutes in order to sterilize it. And of course, the other thing, if food manufacturers want to start using it, is some of the studies showed that adding eggshell powder to the food affected the gluten structure of any baked goods. And also, I think if you put eggshells on your ingredients list, you're going to have to run a public education campaign first in order to change the public's perception of that.
Oh, eggshells. Yeah, that tracks.
Ah, come on. That's not for human consumption. You don't eat the packaging.
Oh, that's gross. That's disgusting. Why would they do that?
What other recipes has this lady got?
3-ingredient chocolate cake. Just blend 1 apple, 1 egg, and cacao powder. Pour in a dish and bake for 30 minutes. You now have a single-serve healthy cake without any grains, gluten, nuts, or dairy. Follow for more.
Is it cow pat? Oh, yuck.
You could almost accept the flavor because it's, it still tastes like food, even if it's not necessarily sweet food. Like I'd say you probably need some sugar in that, but it's more the texture. It's genuinely the texture of like just a wad of wet mud. Yeah, it's not very good.
Let's try one more.
If you add scrambled eggs, cacao powder, honey, and a splash of milk to a blender, puree it until smooth and creamy, you now have a scrambled egg chocolate pudding. Just trust me on this. It tastes like those snack packs we used to eat as a kid, but a lot healthier and loaded with protein. Try it and report back. Trust me.
I've left the first bowl as is and added 2 tablespoons of extra sugar to the rest of the mixture because cocoa powder is bitter and it just didn't taste sweet at all. And then I refrigerated both of them for an hour.
It looks weird. It looks like it's oxidizing. It's gone darker on the edges. It just doesn't really taste like chocolate. It doesn't taste like much, but it is a mousse texture. Quite bitter.
Why?
I would like to taste it with more sugar added because it's got quite a nice texture.
Same recipe, more sugar.
That's so much better. That's pretty good.
Tastes a bit like a shop-bought sort of cheap and nasty chocolate pudding. But, I'd go in for a second spoon.
I would probably eat that if it was served.
Scrambled eggs.
Interesting. Can't taste it.
Finally, we have a recipe that everybody likes. Now, as weird as most of the recipes on this lady's page look, if you read her profile, she says that she has IBS or irritable bowel syndrome. So while most of us can eat what we like and put all different ingredients in a recipe and feel totally fine, for people with irritable bowel syndrome, it's a different story. They can end up with severe cramps and pain and diarrhea or constipation or swapping between the two depending on the form of IBS that they have, and it can be quite limiting in their life because they never know when this is going to happen. And imagine that if you've gone shopping or you've gone traveling or you've gone to the movies, and it's not a good thing. It really makes life very difficult if your gut is not working properly. And because it involves the gut, most people then end up keeping food diaries and writing down exactly what they're eating, trying to see what is triggering these flare-ups so that they can restrict their diet and avoid any foods that were causing issues. Hence why she's obviously gone grain-free and all these different other things that she's excluding, trying not to have any more of these flare-ups. And this is an area which needs a lot more research. The trouble with irritable bowel syndrome is that word on the end, syndrome. Syndrome is not a disease. Like if you have celiac disease or Crohn's disease, it's a defined disease that we can do a test and tell you if you have it or you don't. A syndrome is a group of people who have the same symptoms. They have something wrong, but when they've been tested for all different diseases, They don't have any of the diseases that we know of, so we don't actually know what is causing all these symptoms. Now, what that means is this group of people may not all have the same thing. As research happens over years, you might find that a quarter of that group has a specific disease that hasn't been defined yet, or another half of the group may have something else altogether that's causing the symptoms that they're having. Not all of them actually have the same thing. So one diet that works for one person with IBS may not work for the other one with IBS. And in the last decade, there's actually been some interesting research looking into some people with IBS having flare-ups in response to environmental pollutants like pollens. So at particular times of year, when particular flowers and trees are in bloom, they have a flare-up. Now, if they're only looking at food diaries, that's really going to throw that into confusion, because they may only be eating the foods they think of as safe, and then they get sick and they're like, why? I haven't done anything wrong. And it can be very confusing. If you're one of those people, try and book in to see an immunologist instead of just a gastroenterologist, and they may be able to help you there with that. So hopefully over time we can get more help for these people. But if you see anyone who says they have it, be very thankful that you can eat whatever you like, and send them some love in the comments. Next, Jo sent in this video. She said it caught fire in her microwave.
If you also remember these teething rusks, the long stick ones that were bread, please stay tuned, because I'm going to show you a really quick, like 2-second recipe on how to make your own. What you're going to need is a microwave and one piece of bread. Once the crusts are cut off, you literally just roll it into a stick sort of shape, and you don't need any water or anything. It will just mold itself. So roll it, mush it, get it into the shape that you want. And then you microwave it for 90 seconds and then let it cool for about 1 to 2 minutes. And so this is it now. After 90 seconds and cooling, here it is. Share this with a friend who also misses those rusk sticks and need this for their baby.
Let's give it a go. Roll up some bread and microwave it for 90 seconds. Mine did not set on fire, but if I flip it over, it's definitely starting to burn. And if I snap it in half, you can see it's burnt on the inside. The factory that made the original hard teething rusks said that they stopped making them because there was a lack of demand. They just weren't selling enough of them, and they seemed quite perplexed by the number of people on social media going, I can't get hold of teething rusks. I want to know if this is just an Australian thing. If you have the hard teething rusks in your country, let us know, because there's a whole heap of people in Australia who probably want to buy them off you. But in the meantime, if you're living in Australia and you want to make them, let's have a look at the ingredients and see if we can figure out the recipe. If we look at these banana teething rusks, ingredients always have to be listed from most all the way down to least by weight. So we know that wheat flour is first, and that's the most in this recipe, followed by banana. And they have very helpfully told us that it's only 5% banana. Then there's skim milk powder, which is 1.5%. So everything else is less than 1.5% because it's in order. We've got some wheat germ. We'll skip that for now and come back to it. Then some yeast, natural flavour, and salt and minerals. And we can calculate the amount of salt using the nutrition information panel and work it out from the amount of sodium it says there is. And it says here that salt is needed to make the rusks hard. The only problem with these amounts is if we look back at the nutrition information panel, it says the sugar per 100 grams is 9.8 grams. There is not 9.8 grams of sugar here. There's a tiny bit of banana, and that's going to give us 0.6 grams. And the skim milk powder has 0.7 grams of milk sugar in it, and that does not add up to 9.8 grams. For those of you who are regulars and watched the last debunking video, you might remember that wheat germ has the enzyme amylase in it that can break starch down to sugar. So by using wheat germ in this recipe, they can break down some of the starch from the flour into sugar without putting sugar on the ingredients list. So if we just skip the wheat germ and add some sugar in there as the second biggest ingredient, and then just take out 9 grams of flour, we have our recipe. Mash up that banana and add it in with everything else, and add enough water to make a dough. Give that a good knead and then roll it out into a long snake and cut it up. Now I've got 2 trays. The first one goes way too big in the oven, so I'm going to cut the second tray in half and make them smaller and bake them on low heat to cook them and dry them out. And they turn out like this, firm but smooth on the outside. You can still break these if you try hard, so as normal you need to supervise babies as they munch or chew with their gums on those teething rusks. And to finish, a reminder not to make tanghulu or melt hard candies or any other sugar in the microwave. We covered this a few videos back. If you missed it, just click on how to cook that below this video to go to the channel and watch that video. It seems to now be making the news in the US with even more people getting burnt.
Shriners Children's Boston issued a warning for parents after staff surgeon Colleen Ryan says she and her colleagues around the world saw an uptick in children and teens with severe burns.
The burns from this TikTok idea can require skin grafting and cause nerve damage. Dr. Ariel Abele says he's speaking out before it gets any worse.
We have seen in the last 3 weeks 4 patients, 2 adults, 2 children.
Serious burns on their feet and their hands, both young and old. He believes parents simply don't know the burn risk of this molten candy.
With thanks to my amazing patrons for all of your support, here is a list of legends. Make it a great week by being kind to others, and I'll see you on Friday.